Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
This is a PSA, or public sock announcement. Experts have declared Bombas socks as the best way to warm up chilly feet. These pairs are super cushy, soft, and designed for maximum coziness. Plus, for every pair purchased, another pair will be donated, so someone in need of essential clothing can stay warm this winter. Go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.
There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton bedding from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and breathable sheets. You'll experience pure comfort on night one and feel your bedding get softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com with code CUMULUS. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
FunBelt PodCast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where I think clearly the best group of five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league is about.
My name's Jeremy Harper with FunBelt PodCast. I'm also with HowRazor.com. With me, as always, is Ben Moore from PantherTalk.com and Dusty Thibodeau from WarhawkReport.com. And before we get to our guest, before we talk about our guest, our special guest, I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened today. The coaches poll, USA Today. We've got 3 G5s in it. 2 of them are Sunbelt. Is this good for the Sun Belt, or are preseason polls just absolute crap designed to keep the mandate or keep us down?
Yeah, I think it's a huge step, and I think it's a huge statement ultimately for the league. And then, 2020 was such a huge year for the Sun Belt, arguably the best ever, as we've talked about for a while. And I think it's one of those situations where it wasn't fleeting. It may not be fluky, but it also sets the bar for the league too in a major way. And, App State's over there peaking, in the receiving votes category as well, which is intriguing to me. And as I was discussing with somebody earlier this week, they have a little game with Miami in week 2. And, oh, by the way, Miami opens up with Alabama here in Atlanta. And we all know about the Bama effect. So App has a big opportunity. Coastal has an opportunity. And as we'll discuss, I'm sure, Louisiana has an opportunity with those Texas Longhorns.
So, Dusty, you've heard what Ben had to say.
Yeah, so I'm a guy literally straddling the fence that I've always thought the preseason polls are crap. It's really just a rehash of what did you do for me last year. But how great is it to have 2, 3 in the top 30 Sun Belt Conference teams that are representing us all and really bringing exposure to the league. So I'm not a fan of the polls, but I definitely love this year's poll with having a good Sun Belt flavor in it.
I hate the polls with a passion, but they give me something to talk about. So with that, I want to introduce our guest, Chris Vannini. He does a great job covering the group of 5. And I would kind of like to know what he thought about today's USA Today poll.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a big deal. This is the first time in the playoff era that there are 3 group of 5 teams in the top 25, along with Cincinnati at number 10. And that stuff matters. If you're Cincinnati trying to get to the playoff, if you're Louisiana Lafayette or Coastal Carolina trying to get that group of 5 spot, if Cincinnati falters, it matters to be there because most years there's one group of 5 team in the poll. And so it's impossible to make the playoff because you're always coming from behind. And to start at a high level, does it matter? Does it affect play on the field? No, but it affects the perception of a team And we all know there are plenty of voters who don't watch all the games or even pay attention, and they just see, oh, a team won, so I'm just going to leave them in that same spot on the poll. And so if you're already starting in the top 25, you're going to get that treatment. So every year there are more Group of 5 teams in the poll at the end of the year than there are at the beginning of the year. So to start with 3, especially 2 for the Sun Belt, I think is a big positive.
With that said, though, of the G5 starting in the top 25, does it give more, I guess, weight to say if a Louisiana Lafayette loses to Arkansas State, if they lose to Texas State? Us in the conference, we would know, yeah, that's, they got a pretty good thing going, a pretty good team. But on the outside, does it give it an even worse stank to it that, oh, God, they lost to Arkansas State?
Well, it depends who you lose to. If you lose to Texas State, yeah, that's going to hurt you. But if you lose to Appalachian State, it won't hurt you as much because App is a proven commodity and it'll make App look better. I mean, like last year, Coastal beats Louisiana when Louisiana was ranked. It helps Coastal get up, and Louisiana rises up as they keep winning because Coastal keeps winning as well. So it kind of depends who you lose to. I mean, if you lose to another good team in the conference, then it does elevate your conference. If you lose to a Texas State, then no, it doesn't.
Brought up some good points, but one of the things that I noticed today after the poll was released, Mountain West is pissed off. And do they have the right to be? I mean, they've got good teams, and they're not in the top 25 at all.
I think the Mountain West is going to have a very good year, but I also understand them not being in the preseason top 25. I mean, frankly, I'm really high on San Jose State more than I think a lot of people in the league are. They weren't even picked to win their division, even though they won the conference last year and bring back like 20 starters. So San Jose State will be a good team again, and they play USC early in the season. I think we could certainly see several Mountain West teams ranked as the season goes on, but if you're starting at the preseason, I would put Cincinnati, Louisiana, Coastal ahead of them. I would probably put San Jose State in the top 25, but other than that, I think the other teams have to kind of prove themselves.
I think Texas is starting in that top 25. Are they really deserving of that, you think? Or do you feel that that's kind of because they're in the SEC now, we as voters have to kind of boost them up and add credit to them getting that invitation to join the SEC?
No, I mean, they were a top 25 team under Tom Herman. They weren't a top 10 team, and that's why he got fired. So they're a good team. Bijan Robinson is going to be one of the best running backs in the country. They seem to really like the quarterbacks that they have there. They're going to be a pretty good team. They're like, Sark's not getting fired. I mean, Tom Herman's not getting fired for going 3-7. They were winning 8-9 games a year, so they're a good team. I don't think the SEC stuff really had anything to do with it. No, I think just being Texas probably helps, but I don't think any of the realignment stuff played a role.
We're a couple weeks removed from Sunbelt Media Days. The SEC steals our thunder with the whole conference realignment. How do you see that kind of shaking out for like the Sunbelt? Do you think that they're going to go out and add maybe some Conference USA teams? Do they raid the new guy on the block of the WAC? Are they pulling from the Southland of the FCS ranks? How do you see that kind of shaking out?
They're not in a hurry to add anybody unless they bring an increase in television money per school. I mean, the American did not replace UConn because nobody was going to make their TV deal better. The Big 12 is not going to add anybody, most likely, unless any of those American teams add to their TV payout. So I don't know who would provide value and who wouldn't. Would a Marshall, would a UAB help the Sun Belt? Probably, but I don't know if those teams are in a position to just jump to another conference. Now, could Conference USA split? I mean, that's something that's kind of been talked about, but I think the Sun Belt's in a really safe spot. I don't think it's in danger of losing anybody to the American either, because the American, everybody in that conference has budgets of like $30 million plus. While the Sun Belt doesn't really have that. They're not paying coaches that much money. There is a hierarchy within the Group of Five in terms of resources. So, could UT Arlington be on the way out basketball wise? Like maybe, but as it relates to football, they're in a pretty good spot, the Sun Belt is, and they're not in a hurry to do anything unless somebody can really provide them a boost, mostly in TV money.
Do you see it being a trade-off if there are additions of Arkansas, Little Rock, and UTA are removed, and then South Alabama and UAB are added to do that, or do you think it goes to 14 teams even for basketball?
Only really ESPN has the information on whether those teams would bring money to the league or not. I suspect somebody like BYU would. I don't know about South Alabama, but you're not chasing TV markets anymore. And I talked to Carl Benson a couple weeks back about kind of how a 16-team conference works, because that's what he did in the WAC. They had a 16-team conference that went from Hawaii to Texas, and they went for the media market. So when Conference USA raided the Sun Belt, grabbed FIU and FAU and North Texas and went for the TV markets, Carl realized that wasn't going to work long term, and that you wanted to get teams with infrastructure, with sources, with a proven track record of success, and that's what they did with App State and Georgia Southern and Coastal Carolina, and it clearly worked out. Could James Madison be in that? Maybe. They have a lot of money, but it really is going to come down to, is anybody going to provide you more TV money, because that's what's driving everything.
Well, Ben Moore heard a rumor on the message boards. Ben, can you share this rumor with us? And gosh, Chris, can you confirm if it's true or not, since you're so connected?
I love the off season because message board rumors, and this fan talked to this guy, and he is sworn to secrecy, obviously, but allegedly, supposedly, according to a Marshall fan, one Commissioner Gill had pulled up to Marshall and was checking things out. And what I am always fascinated by this, in the world we live in, certainly coming off 2020, you can do some of the stuff virtually. So I don't see the olden days where he's taking a tour of the Marshall facilities, but I'm with you, Chris, and then you may be able to confirm this or discuss it. I know specifically in the Atlanta airport here, there's meeting rooms just for this, and the SEC folks like to use this as well. So, but yeah, and it's funny, Chris, you talked about the TV markets. Here's the fun thing about the Sun Belt. They do not have a basketball contract deal at all. It doesn't exist with ESPN. It's just football. The AAC does. The AAC has TV deals for both basketball and football. So big differentiator there specifically. But, you cover the entire group of five. We obviously are familiar with the Sun Belt intimately. What would a Marshall bring? Or, the program that keeps rolling out there all the time is, what is Liberty going to do? What do you foresee like those guys? Does it make sense for the Sun Belt, or, should they shoot higher?
And Chris, before you answer that, just to let you know, in full disclosure, the source of that rumor was from a poster named Min Bohr. So he was very anonymous. We don't know who it is.
But, we can't confirm.
Cloaked in secrecy.
I do not know anything about Keith Gill traveling or not traveling to Marshall, but if you were to look at potential candidates to join the league, I mean, Marshall would be up there, UAB would be up there. Those are teams with strong athletic departments and resources. And then, I mean, Liberty's got all the money in the world, but nobody wants to touch them because of all the religious political stuff that comes along with it. I mean, there are reports that they offered Conference USA like $20 million to join the league, and they said no. Conferences presidents don't want to deal with that. Now, Jerry Falwell Jr. is no longer at the school. I can't speak to kind of the state of where things are there, but I mean, there's been talk about people in the Pac-12 concerned about Baylor and its stance on LGBTQ issues, as opposed to a TCU, which is less strict on that kind of stuff. So that stuff matters. Liberty would bring incredible facilities, and obviously they are a winning football and basketball situation now. Again, it would come down to money and what that would look like, and if people in the conference are willing to deal with what comes along with them. And I'm not really sure how much has changed.
Chris, this is a good segue into something that you touched on in one of your articles. And I don't know if I agree with you or not, but I will tell you this. Perhaps the only way that this all makes sense is Conference USA Sun Belt Super League. Can that happen? Why don't you think it will happen? It has to happen, right? If the SEC is going to do it, which you hate, by the way, I understand your point on that. Why can't we make this deal happen? Why won't it happen? And what are your thoughts on that?
The Conference USA Sunbelt merger or swap is not going to happen because there's no incentive for any of the Sunbelt teams to do it. The Sunbelt has a better TV deal. There's nobody in the Sunbelt wants to leave for Conference USA. It's 10 football teams. It's a pretty tight footprint. It's not stretched out too far. Conference USA is the one that needs all the help. It has the worst TV deal. It has spanning 3 time zones, which certainly frustrates a lot of members in the league. But if you're the Sunbelt, what are you getting out of that? I mean, you'd be better off doing what you just said, just straight up adding a couple teams from Conference USA as opposed to anybody wanting to leave the league. The Sunbelt's in a much more stable position, which is just kind of ironic given it was Conference USA that raided the Sunbelt 10 years ago. So it's not happening because there's no incentive for anybody in the Sunbelt to do it, is essentially
the only reason, Chris, that I can see it happening is only because it's the SEC pushing that super conference thing to happen. And the only way people are going to survive, in my opinion, or maybe not even my opinion, maybe I'm just speculating, is that maybe super conferences are the way to go. Maybe this is the only way that a group of 5 set of schools can compete when the SEC is just gobbling up all the high-profile programs.
But it's only gathering up those programs because they're bringing more money television-wise. They're not adding Texas and Oklahoma just to get 16 teams. They're adding Texas and Oklahoma because they're going to bring a lot more money for everybody. And again, could the Sun Belt choose to add some teams? Maybe, but they would have to get value out of that. You're not going to mix them together. I don't think the Sun Belt is going to be helped by adding an Old Dominion and a UTEP at the same time or something like that. That's when I talked to Mike Oresco, the commissioner of the American, he's like that report about the Americans thinking about adding all 8 Big 12 teams. It doesn't make any sense because you don't league that doesn't work. Also, that would be it would go the other way around, not that way. And the Big 12 is not going to add East Carolina and Tulsa to its league. So individual schools have individual value, and adding size for size doesn't work. That's why the WAC blew up. That's why there have been people who've talked about Conference USA potentially splitting at some point. A group of 5 conferences adding teams to add teams is not going to make a difference, because if the Power 5 or whoever is left is going to go make their Super League or make their mega conferences, you're getting left out either way.
Do you think there is a potential for I have this question come up a lot with folks on social media. Do you think about teams like Louisiana Monroe that could potentially drop back down, or there are teams in FCS that could jump up, teams like North Dakota State potentially? Dusty has a love affair with Idaho and probably needs some help, I think, with that and his love for the Kibbe Dome and Idaho in general. But do you identify, or do you look at that certainly over the next few years as you gaze in that athletic crystal ball that I know you guys have, where we can see who's dropping down, who's pulling up, or is just everyone's going to stay status quo and we stay at 130 in the FBS ranks?
The president at ULM made the point when they were starting the coaching search that they don't want to drop down to FCS, but it's something that everybody has to consider. And the problem is nobody wants to be the one to do it, because nobody wants to bite the bullet and take the blame for it, because you lose your job for that. And most athletic directors just want to raise some money and move on to a bigger job. That's what happened at Idaho. The president essentially got run out because he wanted to do this move. There were other issues and stuff like that, but it created a firestorm around them, and nobody wants to go through that again. And it also doesn't really save you money in the short term, because you're not going to get as much money for the guarantee games. Instead of getting $1.2 million, you're going to get $500,000 to go play an SEC team on the road or something like that. So you don't end up saving all that much money in the short term. Now, long term, I think a lot of schools need to think about what they want athletics to be, because a lot of them are spending at a rate that they cannot sustain. But again, it's everybody just in jobs for the short term. Hey, I want to build a new practice facility and that'll help me get a bigger job, and then I'm off and someone else can deal with these problems.
Yeah, I wrote a story a couple of years ago about how I thought maybe ULM should consider what Idaho did. Now I kind of regret that, because it looks like to me that ULM is actually trying to make a push to
I talked to a kid last recruiting cycle that was going to UMass, and he said the same thing. I mean, the coaches up there were adamant that they were staying. They are not a factor up there at all.
UMass
at all.
Yeah.
Like they not an FBS school, so they recruit Georgia hard. They had some coaches that hit the Southeastern Conference, and quite honestly, there were kids who used to say, man, there's more kids at their 6A and 7A high school games than were at UMass games. And it was astounding, especially as the weather turns up there in Boston area. Folks don't run and are not banging the drum for UMass football. And certainly we saw UConn's the same way. But that's the independent life, or even life in the Northeast, where pro sports dominate. And I mean, they probably draw more for UMass hockey than they would for football in some days.
Well, not to mention the weather sucks.
Well, yeah, but you know what's funny?
Exactly.
You think of UConn and you think of UMass, and because of the strength of their basketball history, you kind of just assume
Absolutely.
that the school is in a position to play this great football, and then it turns out that's just not the case. So,
it's what's going to happen, I think, with Kansas. I mean, look at Kansas. If whatever the Big 12 does, they're looking at it and going, we're a behemoth in basketball. And, oh, by the way, Oklahoma and Texas play pretty good basketball too. So this may cost them. They may look at it and say, why not go jump in the Big Ten? And how about Iowa State, where they're looking at, they built their program to this point and they're going, oh, crap, what just happened? What do we do now?
I mean, same Houston State, they just won the national championship in FCS in the spring, and their coach said he doesn't want to go to FBS because he wants to stay at FCS where you can play for a championship instead of just competing for a nothing bowl game. And so there's differing perspectives at the FCS level on what they want and what exactly they want athletics to be.
I think the ultimate takeaway we can get from that, Chris, is Idaho doesn't belong in the Sun Belt. Am I right?
Yeah, they were in the Sun Belt twice, weren't they?
Yes.
Because
that's enough.
I was playing NCAA football 2005 this weekend, and I realized Idaho. I think Idaho and I think New Mexico State were in the league back then as well. So I know they've had a couple cups of coffee together, and there's a lot of hurt feelings at Idaho over the drop down that a lot of people have not gotten over it, I guess, to put it bluntly. But I think in the long run, it's probably better for them, to do that then, because they had nowhere else to go. They were getting kicked out of the conference.
Let's talk about the current situation with the Sun Belt right now. How do you see the Sun Belt shaking out this year? And do you have any sleeper teams that you think we should look out?
It should be a really good year. Like, I'm really interested to see Louisiana against Texas. I think Coastal will handle Kansas. The App State-Miami game will be interesting. Those three teams obviously stand out. I mean, they've all got a lot of good, talented players. The only question, I think, is App State and how do they replace Zach Thomas? Is Bryce going to be the guy? They need to figure out what they're going to be a quarterback, because everywhere else I think they're going to be pretty good. So then, I think the Cajuns in the West Division shouldn't have much of a problem with anybody in the league, I don't think. I mean, maybe South Alabama with Jake Bentley could be interesting. Arkansas State's got Lane Hatcher, and Butch Jones added a bunch of transfers, so we'll see how they look. But they should be pretty safe in the West. But then in the East, I mean, Georgia State is definitely a team to watch. I mean, we're all going to focus on Coastal and App State, but Georgia State, was right in a lot of those games last year, and obviously brings a lot back. And if I was to pick a team outside of those three that everybody talks about, it would have to be Georgia State as a potential sleeper. Georgia Southern, we'll see how they look without Shy Wirtz at quarterback. It's been so long. Don't really know what to expect. But, I mean, for a 10-team conference, it's a lot of good teams.
Well, Ben Moore is just about to bust hearing about you endorsing Georgia State as the sleeper team in the East. Ben, do you have anything to back up that assertion? Do you want to say anything that will convince Dusty and I that this prediction from Chris is true?
It's not just me. That's the fun part. You get somebody who's a nationally recognized voice on the Group of Five.
I saw the transaction.
My question. Well, here my question for Chris: is there any tradition that he's seen covering college football or being associated with college football that is more strange than what goes down at Georgia Southern and the baptism in that drainage ditch? Because that just happened 2 days ago. In case you missed it on Twitter, if you're following Georgia Southern football, they baptized their seniors in beautiful Eagle Creek. And we have plenty of jokes in Atlanta about that. But I just wanted to get your takeaway as somebody who covers.
You're falling into a trap here, okay? So I want you to be very careful about how you answer this, because Georgia Southern fans are really crazy.
I did not see that. This is the first I am hearing of it. So I can't speak to the creek itself. I have not been to Statesboro. So yeah, I guess I can't really say anything on it.
I'm quite literally sending you the video now. So we'll have to get you on again at a later date. We'll go over this. We like to talk about it, obviously, with the the diseases, and I just think that once you go through that, I think you're pretty much covered against anything. I mean, it's if you haven't, I just go back to like the Oregon Trail games when I was in school. Like you died of dysentery. Like if you make it on the other side of this creek, I think you can fight off malaria and dysentery.
Well, yeah, what's funny about that tradition too, Ben, is that San Marcos in Texas State has this beautiful river that you can get into. It looks so nice. And it's like, that seems like if anybody deserves a baptism, you should do it right there in San Marcos, not in Georgia State. In that,
got the bayous in Monroe.
Maybe. I don't know. I've never been to the bayous of Monroe, but I'm sure those are nice too. But then you get that creek at Georgia Southern, and you're like, I don't see the love affair with that, but I'm sure it's very nice. I'm sure it's nice.
Look, in all honesty, going to Georgia Southern for a game, I was impressed. The traditions, the just everything had its own meaning there. It really reminded me of a big school like a Texas A&M, an Auburn, anything like that. Yes, smaller statue. Everyone's going to be saying, "Oh, they're on the same level as A&M." No, that's not what I said. But just that, they all have their own rituals, their own meanings, their own traditions. It's great to see that, knowing that at ULM, there's not much athletic tradition there. Whenever the mascot change happened, it really killed a lot of what the traditions and things were. That now maybe that's what kind of adds to their woes of athletics is kind of the identity crisis. What do we do?
I mean, nothing creates traditions more than winning. And Georgia Southern, from pretty early in its history, started winning. And so once they did that, they got people on board, and you create the traditions, and you go from there. And obviously, ULM doesn't have much of a history of winning since they moved up to 1A. And you kind of lose a generation, when you struggle for so long, essentially.
Chris, are there any Group of Five games, including those in the Sun Belt, that you're really keeping an eye on?
I don't have the schedule in front of me. Is Texas, Louisiana week 1? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the first game. So that's one of the games I'm looking forward to as much as any game, period. I mean, other than Georgia Clemson. Now we know it's officially a top 25 matchup between a veteran Louisiana Lafayette team against a Texas team with a new coach and a new system. I think Texas is like a 3-touchdown favorite or something like that. Last I looked, like a month or so ago. I don't know. I mean, the Cajuns went to Ames and beat Iowa State, which won the Fiesta Bowl last year. I'm not if they can find a couple. By 17 points. If they can find a couple of running backs, I would certainly give Louisiana a shot.
What do you think it takes for Billy Napier to actually leave the Cajuns? I mean, yes, as a non-Lafayette fan, I'm definitely cheering for his departure and their demise. But in all honesty, I mean, he is a great football coach there that has really gotten that program to the next level.
Just finding the right place and the right AD who understands what he does and how he does it. What he's done there in a couple of years is remarkable, and they've done a good job of backing it up where now he makes $2 million and no other coach in the conference even makes $1 million. So they're investing to keep him, knowing that at some point he's probably going to go. But, you know, if he has another big year, which they should, you would think everybody in the SEC will understand it, that whatever reservations you may have about him for whatever reason, I don't know. But it's pretty clear what he's done on the field at Louisiana, coupled with working for Davos Sweeney, working for Nick Saban. You can't get a resume that's much better than that.
Yeah, I just don't think the right job was out there. I mean, do you really want to take a Tennessee job that has all of the on-field, off-field issues? You got to play Alabama every year. You got to play Florida every year.
Yeah.
I mean, you're setting yourself up for a failure to take that. Yes, it's a big name, big SEC job, but I think he was smart for turning it down and returning back.
I mean, you look at the jobs he's been in the mix for. I mean, Mississippi State, tough job. South Carolina, tough job. Tennessee, there's a reason I hired Josh Heupel, because nobody else wanted that job because they're all scared of the NCAA violations that are coming down there. So, you know, he can do better than those jobs. Now, is an SEC school going to be okay with hiring a Sunbelt coach to a big time job like an Auburn when that was open, or Florida? I don't know. Maybe that's a harder sell, but the dude wins, and he's been a coach. I mean, his family is coaches, and you can clearly see what he's built there is and calling the plays. He's a very smart guy. He's a former number one recruiter in the country, and he's calling the offensive plays. Like, the guy does everything. So I mean, he's got quite a track record. So yeah, if you're a bigger SEC school, you should certainly be taking a look at Billy Napier because, you know, of what he's done.
What about
Chris, what do you think?
Chadwell at Coastal?
Yeah, Jimmy Chadwell. Yeah.
Do you feel that last year really made the name for him, or do you feel that he still has some more proving to do before he's in those same conversations?
He's got to do it for more than 1 year, and I mean, I think they will. I think they'll be a really good team this year now that they have everything in place. But, you know, to go 5-7, 5-7, and then 11-1, you're not going to get an SEC job out of something like that. I think that would have been honestly, I think that would have been a great hire for Tennessee. The dude named his kid after Heath Schuler. He's from Tennessee. He was the lowest paid head coach in the country last year. I think he would have been a great fit for Tennessee. But since obviously Tennessee's full now, depends on what comes open. But, you know, you get another year like they did last year, another 1 or 2 with the fun kind of offense they play. I think everybody else will kind of wake up to that.
Well, Tennessee isn't beachfront property, so I can see where Chadwell would be like, I'm just going to stay here and enjoy myself at Coastal Carolina. How about any other? Do you see any of the other coaches reaching that kind of acclaim that Chadwell and Billy Napier have? I know that Georgia State has a great coach in. Suddenly the name escapes me. Ben, help me.
Sean Elliott.
Yeah, Sean Elliott. Yes. And then we have Spavital in Texas State. Who else do you think could really start seeing their stock rise?
Well, you got to put together a 10-win conference championship type of season. I mean, that's the only way you get noticed in pretty much any Group of 5 job. I mean, it's good to win 7-8 games a year and do that consistently, but Skip Holtz is still at Louisiana Tech. He hasn't had that breakthrough 11-win season where people wanted to give him a chance at a Power 5 job. So I said Georgia State was a sleeper. Could if Georgia State has a big 11-1 season, a lot more people are going to take notice of Sean Elliott. So it's kind of that situation. I don't really see anybody in the Sun Belt doing that this year outside of the three that we already know between Sean Clark, Billy Napier, and Jamie Chadwell. So in terms of future coaching carousel, I'm sure Butch Jones would love to get back into the SEC if he has a big year, but we got to see it first.
Yeah, I honestly, Chris, I don't know Butch Jones. After that time he had in Tennessee, he might be done with the SEC. He might have to move out to the Pac-12 where it's a little more chill. But
he just likes the Dairy Queen there in Jonesboro.
He does. I just hope that he gets the 10 wins and then he moves on and enjoys his life. That would be great.
So, Chris, something that kind of came out midday, late in the day, that I saw you going back and forth on Twitter a little bit about this whole NCAA Constitutional Committee. Is this the NCAA basically crying uncle and trying to reinvent themselves so they're relevant, or what's kind of your take on this new committee that's in the process of being formed?
Well, the belief is this is going to be how the conferences, especially the Power 5 conferences, kind of take more power and do what they want to do. But there are only 5, I think, 5 of the 23 directly come from the Power 5. And only 1 from the SEC. So we'll have to see. But I talk to people who are they think, this was the SEC's plan all along. You get Texas and Oklahoma, the NCAA is going to reinvent itself. You can take more power to do what you want, whether that's more scholarships, whether that's bowl win requirements, whether that's further compensation of players. The NCAA is essentially trying to give up some of its power. And this committee is going to determine exactly what and how. Now, it's full of people at the D3 and D2 level, which was the SEC's whole complaint, that they had to abide by the same rules as Binghamton and these conferences that aren't facing the same problems the SEC is. So my take from it is that you're going to see, I think, a lot of jockeying from the big conferences, especially the Division I people on that committee, to basically say, let us kind of do a bit more of what we want. And I don't know what those proposals are going to look like in November, but that's essentially what it is. I mean, they want to decentralize the NCAA a bit and not have the league control so many things. Does football become its own separate entity? That's something that the Knight Commission recommended. There's all kinds of possible changes that could come. This is going to be a big deal come November. And I think people are just going to kind of not think about it until we see some of these proposals drop, because you could see a radical overhaul of college sports and especially college football, come the end of the year.
Do you think that it furthers that divide, so to say, between the D1, D2, D3?
Yes, especially D1 and everybody else, especially FBS and everybody else. I think that's largely the purpose of this, to let those conferences and schools that have all the money basically do more stuff with that money without having to deal with the NCAA on certain things. Maybe they are allowed to make their own rules on the number of coaches you can have and stuff like this. I think there are a lot of things that programs like that would like to be able to do on their own, and that's what this is going to kind of determine.
Hey, Chris, we've had, here in Arkansas, we've seen a lot of University of Arkansas student athletes receive NIL compensation, but we're not seeing a whole lot of action amongst the group of 5 teams. Do you think NIL is good for the group of 5, or what do you think? Or do you think that some programs will work out better than others in that?
It's going to depend on the place. Honestly, what makes the NIL most valuable is just how passionate of a fan base you have. If you have a lot of fans who are really interested in your program, then there's going to be more opportunities. I mean, you're seeing what UCF is doing. They've had a lot of people get stuff because UCF's a big deal in Orlando. The Alabama quarterback Bryce Young is getting $1 million in endorsements without playing a snap. because he's the Alabama quarterback, and Alabama is a brand that people want to be associated with. So if you're a Group of 5 school that has that, then that's a good thing. It's really going to depend place by place. As it relates to recruiting, Power 5 is typically getting every recruit over a Group of 5 school as it is. So I don't know it's going to make that much of a difference in recruiting in the end. I think the teams that have the most passionate fans and the largest fan bases are going to get the most recruits, and that's how it's kind of always been.
Yeah, you know what? I've always, I look at it through a marketing lens too. It seems like it's all regional. I mean, even if you're Alabama, you got to be careful because you've got Auburn fans too. So if you're a bank in Alabama, you have to be careful about how you parse that. So I'm not sure how that NIL situation shakes out. There seems to be a lot of activity now. I don't know how it's going to be next year.
So, Chris, also with kind of the shift of power, so to say, it's always, I guess, the big thing, when you get to play your flagship school of your state, to kind of show them, hey, we might be the smaller school, but, we still belong. We can compete. It's even better when you can get those schools on your campus. In several of the big games coming up, Arizona State's going to travel to Texas State. Ole Miss goes to South Alabama, Arkansas State hosts Iowa State, and so forth. Do you think those games kind of go by the wayside, at least where they travel to the smaller schools?
It depends on the schools. I mean, some have often done it and some haven't. I mean, Florida didn't play outside the Eastern time zone for like 30 years in a non-conference game. But Missouri and Oklahoma State, they traveled to Central Michigan and Toledo and all these places. So it kind of just depends on the philosophy of the place and the AD and the coach and what they want to do. I think you need to get better games on your schedule. You can't just schedule a bunch of FCS blowouts that's not going to get fans in the stands. So if you can get a 2-for-1 with a pretty good G5 team you think will draw well, then you do that. Frankly, I love and respect the hell out of any Power 5 team that goes and plays at a Group of 5 school, because honestly, they probably don't need to, but I think in the end they see value in it, even if it's not straight financial.
I feel like we squeezed every ounce of information we could possibly squeeze out of Chris Vannini. Oh God, Vanilli. Oh my God.
That was Chris amazing. Vannini. Milli Vanilli just kind of morphed there. That was amazing.
I'll remember that, but I do encourage.
You should promote the Athletic and tell them, hey, Chris wants to remain employed, so go subscribe.
Yes, go subscribe to the Athletic, not the Atlantic. That's another magazine. Subscribe to the Athletic.
Not the same thing.
Very well written. It's very well done, and it's really treated the Group of 5 in a good way, and we really do appreciate that. Chris, is there anything that you'd like to plug while you're here?
I mean, we got a ton of preseason stuff coming on the Athletic in the month of August, all kinds of features. Conference previews are going to start running next week, later half of next week. I'll have a FunBelt preview on there.
Yes.
And I'll have my 130 ranking of every team coming in a couple weeks too. So we're ramping, we've been talking about realignment and all kinds of stuff for a while now, but the actual football's here, and we're going to have plenty of stuff on that as August goes on the Athletic. So hope you guys check that out.
And thank you very much, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Skip the waiting room. TireRack.com now offers convenient mobile tire installation in select areas. Simply shop TireRack.com for your next set of tires, and at checkout, choose Tire Rack Mobile Tire Installation. An expertly trained technician will arrive with your tires and install them on site, at home, at the office, wherever you are. You'll spend less time waiting and more time doing the things you enjoy. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
Glad Force Flex Max Strength now has bags with a 2 times stronger top for over-the-top strength, like the kind of over-the-top strength you need when Bill breaks your bowl of buffalo chicken dip. Glad Force Flex Max Strength, strong enough for all of life's garbage. 2 times stronger top versus 13-gallon Force Flex bags.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.